We're married now, Ally and I have submitted the marriage registration. So, no matter how much you cry and beg, divorce is final. We're officially husband and wife. You really made me wait, refusing to break up with me for so long. Ally glares at me with a displeased expression, perhaps thinking about the time she was made to wait. I'm kind, so I was thinking about how to break up without hurting you too much. But then you fell ill, which gave me a good reason. Aaron really is kind. But because of that, I ended up waiting for so long, and it infuriates me. The two of them are telling me their unreasonable justifications. Divorcing a useless person who can neither do household chores nor work. And I'll demand alimony. There's a lot I want to say, but it seems pointless to argue with people who can say such outrageous things with confidence. I thought that and decided to accept the divorce. Understood. But 7 days later, Aaron calls me, crying. My name is Jen, 27 years old. I work at a branch of a real estate agency. I got married 2 years ago and currently live with my husband, Aaron, but before that, I lived with my mother. My parents divorced when I was young, and my mother raised me on her own. However, my father did pay child support, and my mother was an independent woman, so I never faced financial hardships. I was also cherished by grandparents from both sides. They celebrated events like Thanksgiving, as well as my school entry and graduation ceremonies, and I can say I grew up without lacking any love. Now, my mother lives about a 10-minute walk from us, a distance where soup doesn't even cool, and we manage to find time for lunch or tea despite our busy schedules. I keep in relatively frequent contact with my grandparents. The one I meet the least is my father, but it doesn't seem like he neglects me, rather, he seems to be considerate towards my mother. We do keep in touch, and it feels more like he's on a business trip. Though I can say I grew up without any material lacks, there's always been an awareness in the back of my mind that I'm a child from a divorced family, and I've always harbored a longing for a family where both parents are together. Maybe that's why I had such a strong desire not to end up divorced myself. As a result, I ended up in a painful marriage. Aaron and I started dating when he came to look for a new apartment at the branch I worked at. He was looking to move since his student apartment lease was expiring. I'm living in a kind of dorm, with no bath and a shared toilet. I've had a bit of a pay raise, so I'm thinking of moving to a slightly better place. I showed him quite a few properties based on that request, and we got to talking and found out we had similar interests, which brought us closer. Could we maybe exchange contacts? Normally, it's not advisable to exchange personal contact details with a client, but I wanted to talk more, and ended up giving him my personal account. That led to us dating and eventually, to our engagement. Jen, the lease for the apartment you found for me is up for renewal. I was thinking, why not move into a place where we can live together? That was Aaron's proposal. We had a small, family-only wedding. I don't have many relatives, and Aaron's parents aren't much into family gatherings, so that suited us fine. The attendees were my mother, my in-laws, and my maternal grandparents, along with Aaron's grandparents. We exchanged vows in a chapel and then celebrated with a meal at a small restaurant. It was a simple wedding. But I was filled with happiness. My father and his parents congratulated and celebrated with us when we announced our marriage. They didn't attend the wedding out of consideration for my mother. It wasn't because they were neglecting me. My father and I, that's the kind of good relationship we have. And so, our married life began. Our apartment is a brand new 2-bedroom rental. Of course, it's one of the properties managed by our company, and I put my heart into finding it. It's not very spacious, but it's roomy enough for a newlywed couple starting their life together. The commute to each other's jobs is convenient too. I think we found quite a nice place. You really are a pro, finding such a great place like this. My first apartment was the same, but Jen, I really think you're cut out for real estate. Aaron said that, satisfied with the apartment. I felt a sense of satisfaction in my work and in my personal life as well. That's how our married life began. It was blissful at first. We agreed to share the household chores, but due to Aaron's job in sales, he often came home late, and since I usually could come home on time, the chores mostly fell to me. When he came home late at night, Aaron was usually drunk. I had to drink because of work commitments. It's tough not being much of a drinker. That's so. I understand, but don't overdo it, okay? I know. Sorry for worrying you. Aaron said that, hugging me tightly. It was truly a time befitting newlyweds. But about 6 months in, Aaron started acting strangely. You'd think 6 months into marriage would still be considered newlywed, but it's as if our honeymoon period had ended and he suddenly changed his attitude, belittling my job. You're home already? Being a receptionist at a real estate firm must be easy. Do you ever have to do overtime? Our office has evening hours for clients who can't come by during the day, so there's hardly any overtime after daytime shifts. Really? Sounds cushy. Why don't you work nights too? It's an easy job, so adding a little more time won't make much of a difference, right? I don't want to rely solely on my income. Let me be clear, both of us work. Naturally, we share the financial responsibilities, and it's not true that I'm relying solely on Aaron's income. How many hours did you work today? Just sitting in the office until someone shows up, then doing a bit of work, and you get paid for that. Real estate really is an easy job, isn't it? But Aaron's remarks only got worse. It's not like that. I have to keep in touch with clients, negotiate with landlords, handle repair requests from residents, among other things. Enough already. No matter what you say, it's all passive work, isn't it? You're not exactly initiating anything new, are you? Aaron continued to disparage my job. Why would you say such awful things? You weren't like this before. What? Awful? I think I'm just stating the obvious. Aaron glared at me as he continued. The problem is you expect me to do household chores when our jobs are completely different. So that's it, I realized. Perhaps Aaron was acting this way because he felt guilty about leaving all the household responsibilities to me. I'm sorry, I've just entered a busy period and I've been unavoidably burdening you. He used to apologize like that at first, but now, he acts as if it's only natural for me to do everything, even leaving his laundry on the floor. Could you at least put it in the laundry basket? Stop nagging. If you see it on the floor, just pick it up and put it in the basket yourself. It's not that hard. The conversation went nowhere. While it was unpleasant, it's true that Aaron's job was busier and I had more free time, so I silently took on the household chores. Hoping that once things settled down at work, he would return to his old self. But there was no sign of the Aaron I loved before marriage coming back. Perhaps because I silently took on the chores, Aaron grew increasingly arrogant. Since you're not really doing much, why don't you keep the house a bit cleaner? Even though I had more free time, I was still working too. There were areas I just couldn't get to. The condo we started living in after getting married was new, and I tried my best to keep it as pristine as possible. But Aaron, nitpicking as if searching for any small oversight, would get angry and call it neglect. If you can't manage the house, maybe you should just quit your job. That's what he started saying. Frankly, to comfortably maintain our lifestyle in the current condo, Aaron's income alone wouldn't be enough. And when I pointed that out with numbers, Aaron flew into a rage. So you finally say it. You think my salary is low, that you're looking down on me. I can't figure out what's being said. Wait, I've never thought that, not even once. Liar. After we got married and learned each other's salaries, you started nagging me about doing the chores. It's because you thought my salary was too low. I was mistaken. I assumed Aaron felt sorry that he was too busy to do household chores, that's why he behaved that way. But, I was wrong. After getting married, I realized my salary was higher than Aaron's. This fact wounded his pride, and he felt demeaned, having to do chores as if he was the inferior one. Anyway, my salary is lower. You must have been so pleased, being the one earning more. It's not that much more, I think. It's about the hours worked. I see. I came to understand another thing. Aaron probably feels defeated not just by the total amount, but also by the hourly rate. That's why he was so critical about my almost overtime-free job. I never thought that way, Aaron. I've never looked down on you. But if I've somehow given you that impression, I'm sorry. I hadn't realized it, but I might have hurt Aaron without knowing. Thinking this, I apologized to him. As long as you understand. Listen, in a marriage, the husband is supposed to be the head. If you understand that, start taking better care of the house. It felt unfair, but since my words seemed to calm Aaron down, I thought it was for the best. Given my parents' divorce, I've always been determined not to follow in their footsteps. I didn't want any conflict with Aaron. I had expressed this to him, so I believed he understood my feelings. I thought it was just a matter of enduring a little. If we both just insist on our own way, it would only lead to hurt feelings and worsen our relationship. If I could make a small concession, maybe we could avoid clashes and live harmoniously. This would bring back our peaceful life. I hoped Aaron would revert to the kind man he was before our marriage. But that was a naive thought. Thinking he had subdued me, Aaron became more arrogant, acting like a king and treating me like a servant. Just do as I say. Don't even think about having your own opinion. Yes, I understand. People who don't initiate things should just quietly follow those who are motivated. Remember, always speak to me politely. Eventually, I found myself unable to argue back at all. I've heard that a bird suddenly plunged into hot water will panic and escape, but if it's put in water that gradually heats up, it won't realize until it's too late, and ends up being boiled alive. I was like that bird. Perhaps I had been pushing myself too hard without realizing. One day, I suddenly collapsed at work and was rushed to the hospital by ambulance, ending up admitted. 2 weeks later, Aaron came to visit me, but as soon as he entered the room, he said with a smirk, "You're really useless, aren't you?" Standing next to him was a woman I had never seen before. "I'm sorry for becoming like this. I'll try to get back home as soon as possible. Please forgive me." No need to try so hard. Just take your time to recover. Really? I was surprised by his unexpected words. I thought Aaron would blame me. Yeah, really. Because you and I are done. What do you mean? You're so slow. It means I'm divorcing you and marrying this woman, Ally. Aaron pulled the woman called Ally close, and she leaned on him happily. Ally was a woman wearing gaudy makeup, clearly looking much older than Aaron. Well, we've already split up. I haven't signed the divorce papers, you know? You're already useless, and now that you're sick, you really have no value to me. That's why I filed for divorce. In other words, he's admitting to forging the divorce papers. That's not going to work, you know? Well, it did work. Aaron and the woman smirked and laughed together. Excuse me, who is this lady? Oh, she's my new wife. Nice to meet you. I'm Ally, Aaron's wife. Ally said this with a triumphant look. I've already filed the marriage papers with Ally. So, no matter how much you cry and beg, the divorce is final. We're officially married. You really made me wait because you wouldn't agree to the split, you know? Ally, thinking back on the time she was made to wait, glared at me with an annoyed expression. Waited? How long are we talking about here? How long? It's not just about the days. It was a year. So, they've been involved like this for a year. You have no idea how precious a year is to a woman in her 30s, do you? How old are you? You might not think it to look at me because I'm young, but I'm 38. Ally said this proudly, with a smile that made her thick makeup seem likely to crack. She looks her age enough, but saying that might start more trouble, so I decide to keep silent. I was trying to be kind, thinking of how to break it off without hurting you too much, but then you collapsed, giving me a good reason. Aaron really is kind, you know. But because of that, I had to wait so long. It's infuriating. What a self-serving argument they're both making to me. We're divorcing because you're useless, can't do household chores or work. And I'll be asking for alimony. There's a lot I want to say, but it's pointless to argue with people who can say such outrageous things so confidently. I decide to accept the divorce. Understood. As I said this, the two of them left, looking satisfied. It's like a storm passed through. I murmured this and pulled out my phone from under the covers. I had recorded the entire conversation. I can use this to expose Aaron's wrongdoing. When I was hospitalized, it seems I was in a dangerously vulnerable state for various reasons. Following Aaron's orders, I had become unable to think for myself. I watched Aaron's expressions, made sure not to upset him, did the household chores to his satisfaction, and worked to continue our life. I collapsed from overwork. I wasn't eating properly, I never rested, just kept moving to please Aaron until I suddenly collapsed. I remember being told by a colleague at work that I looked like I had lost weight, but I just reflexively said I was dieting because that's what came to mind. Aaron would be displeased if he knew someone was concerned about me. That's why I said that. It started as just a little concession, but as I gave up more and more ground to Aaron, I found myself cornered and on the brink. And the worst part is, I had no idea it had gotten that bad. I was really shocked. I had thought all along that you were living happily. My mother said this with tears in her eyes as she rushed to the hospital. I still don't understand why I collapsed. I meant every word. All I wanted was a happy life with Aaron. Just that. Yet, despite my slight patience, how did things turn out this way? So, did Aaron come to visit you in the hospital? Hearing you collapsed, why hasn't he said anything? He used to be so kind, what in the world happened? I'd like to know that myself. Even explaining the situation to my mother in a few words is difficult. Anyway, you should rest now. We can think about what to do next later. I ended up being hospitalized for a while. Perhaps thanks to the rest and recuperation, both mental and physical, the fog in my mind began to clear. Why did I just blindly follow Aaron's words? Gradually, I started thinking for myself and realized that continuing married life with Aaron would be difficult. It was during such times that Aaron showed up at the hospital, bringing Ally with him. He seemed to think he could still control me, but by that time, I was fully awake. However, I decided to pretend I was still under his control to see how things would unfold. Then, quietly, I turned on the recording function of my phone from under the blanket. Now, my phone holds evidence of Aaron forging a divorce paper. I'm sure it's a crime. Upon checking, it seems to be a forgery of official documents, punishable by imprisonment. Often there's talk of so many years in prison or such and such amount in fines, but I read that there are no fines for this crime. It means that, unless given probation, one has to go to prison. Somehow, it feels like a crime punishable only by imprisonment is quite serious. Aaron did all that to me. There's no need to hold back against such a villain. I made a call to someone from my phone. I was discharged from the hospital 5 days after Aaron came, but I did not return to the house we lived in. After living in that house for 2 years, the first 6 months were happy, but then Aaron gradually began to change, becoming a tyrant after a year. Probably around the time he met Ally. What I don't understand is, if he wanted to leave me and marry Ally, why did he need to control me? What was Aaron's real purpose in doing all that? But now, rather than pondering these things, I have something else to do. Now that I've regained my physical and mental health, I've decided it's time for payback. 2 days after I was discharged, meaning 7 days after Aaron and Ally's visit to the hospital, as expected, Aaron called. Jen? Good, you answered the phone. Where are you now? Why aren't you coming back home? The nerve of him to say such a thing. I was too appalled to speak. Who might this be? Stop joking. It's me, your husband, Aaron. I don't have a husband, as far as I know. If he filed for divorce and married Ally, Aaron is now Ally's husband. Not mine. So, you divorced me and remarried Ally, correct? Then, you should be her husband and have nothing to do with me. It's all right. I'll divorce Ally and then remarry you, so don't worry. Nobody is worrying about that. I was merely stating the facts. I am not worried at all. I have no intention of remarrying you. Please be happy with Ally. It's a misunderstanding. I love only you, understand? Aaron continued, crying over the phone. Did he think that by crying, he could sway my feelings? I was being threatened, you know. Ally is the daughter of the president of our company. He said he'd fire me if I didn't date her, so I was dating her reluctantly. Believe me. Aaron kept pleading through his tears. Did Ally order you to forge the divorce papers? Yeah, she did. She said she'd make things awful for you if I didn't. I had no choice. I intend to sue you for forging official documents. Upon hearing he would be sued, Aaron stopped crying and became silent. Exactly. That house, it's time for the lease renewal. I won't renew it. It's good timing, switching homes, marriage, and affections, nothing wasted. Wait! I love you! Please, listen to me. Unfortunately, our company cannot assist you in finding a new home. Please consult another firm. Goodbye. I hung up on Aaron's crying pleas and blocked his number. He reached out in panic because he had discovered the truth. This morning, there must have been an article in the newspaper about my parents, or he saw it on the news. Wilson Homes CEO and spouse remarry. When I was a child, my divorced parents remarried. He must have seen the photo with me in it and realized I was the daughter of the CEO of Wilson Homes. My father, or more precisely, his ancestors were major landowners, and Wilson Homes was established based on their property holdings. Even now, our company manages houses and buildings all over America, known as Wilson Homes USA. I work at one of its branches. My parents didn't split out of hatred. My mom was talented with her hands, starting a popular jewelry brand as a hobby. This seemed to upset her MIL, who had hoped my mom would join the family business, Wilson Homes, a company she and my father expanded significantly. As my mom's brand grew, so did the tension between her and her MIL. Various issues led to my parents' separation. Marriage involves just the couple, but Wilson Homes is a big company, and my mom cherishes her own brand. Further family discord could have affected the business. That was the judgment made. My mom took me and left, but my grandmother accepted this. Perhaps she hoped my dad would remarry and have another heir, but he refused all of her attempts. So did my mom. Even separated, they continued to care for each other. That's why my mom kept the Wilson surname post-divorce, and before marrying Aaron, I was also a Wilson. Unknowingly divorced, I've reverted to Wilson, but my grandmother, though strained with my mom, always respected her skills and cherished me as her grandchild. Fair and open-hearted, she struggled to embrace the independence of my mother's venture due to the ancestral legacy and the company's interests. She wished the whole family would unite and protect Wilson Homes together. Encouraged by my father, I joined the company under the condition that I work just like any other employee. In fact, hardly anyone knows I'm the CEO's daughter. My grandmother knew but never made a big deal out of it. While I kept my personal life separate, my father quietly told me how glad he was that I was learning the real estate trade. My current predicament is tied to my parents' divorce. Hearing this, my grandmother began to reconsider things. And she came to my mother, asking her to return. I'm sorry for being stubborn all this time. She said. Under such circumstances, my parents decided to remarry after 25 years. Such an intriguing story wouldn't be ignored by the media. Informed by my mother at the hospital, I said, I want to do the interviews together. And called my grandmother to tell her that. Of course, she was delighted to accept. Major newspapers, TV channels, magazines, many came to interview, and I was prominently featured. Naturally, Aaron would notice, I supposed. And just as planned, Aaron found out that I was the daughter of the president of Wilson Homes and a wealthy landowner. He panicked, called me in tears because he realized what he had lost. I sued Aaron for forging a divorce document. Aaron's lawyer sought a settlement, but I refused, and as a result, Aaron was prosecuted and found guilty with a suspended sentence. Of course, I also demanded compensation from Ally, and since she knew about Aaron's forgery, I sued her as an accomplice. Ally's lawyer also sought a settlement, but I refused, and although Ally received a lighter sentence than Aaron, she too was found guilty with a suspended sentence. The meeting between Aaron and Ally was at the company's founding party. Ally fell for Aaron at first sight there and, despite knowing he was married, pressured him into a relationship. Aaron was initially troubled because Ally was 10 years older and not his type, but he couldn't refuse her because she was the president's daughter and eventually became deeply involved. The president also turned a blind eye to Ally, who couldn't seem to get married. If Aaron took his daughter off his hands, giving his wife a little money should be no problem. That seemed to be the thought process. Aaron admitted that his attitude towards me was initially due to guilt, as he was earning less but making me do almost all the household chores. I wanted to feel justified by speaking ill of Jen, enjoying the attention she gave me. I was being childish. Looking back, I realize I was acting like a child, he confessed, crying. But even if that were his true feelings, the fact remains that he hurt me and pushed me to the brink of losing my heart. Initially, even if it was out of a desire to be pampered, as Ally appeared and I got sick, he thought he could divorce me. So, when he heard I was ill, he rushed to submit the forged divorce papers and filed for marriage with Ally. Once a fait accompli was established, he thought everything would be fine if he could just make me, who obediently followed his every word like a puppet, accept the situation without objection. If Ally's affair were discovered, it would mean divorce due to his fault. He thought to make it seem as if I was the one to blame before divorcing. At home, Aaron treated me like a servant and played for time with Ally, pretending I was the one refusing the divorce, waiting for the right moment. Aaron pleaded to his lawyer, "I never intended to leave Jen." But Ally was so persistent, I couldn't turn her away. The only one I truly love is Jen. I was just waiting for Ally to give up. Of course, no one would take that seriously. Ally's father, furious, forced Ally and Aaron to divorce. Subsequently, Aaron was fired from his job. Now, he works live-in at a company that finally hired him, working from early morning till late at night to pay the compensation to me. Ally's father didn't demand compensation from Aaron. That was not only considering Ally's complicity but also prioritizing the payments to me. Honestly, I didn't care about the money. But I just had to make them pay for their crimes. Even though Ally's father begged me, I refused any settlement. Ally's father, realizing my firm intention, finally understood and said, "From now on, I won't let Ally be free," hoping to settle things peacefully. Now, Ally is under strict family supervision, being thoroughly reformed. Sometimes, I can't help but think that if only Ally hadn't fallen for Aaron, none of this would have happened. But then again, considering she pursued Aaron despite knowing he was married, her guilt isn't light. Aaron should have been aware that he was married and refused Ally's advances. But he didn't. Dreaming of a marriage with the president's daughter, he set a trap for his wife. That's an unforgivable sin. What happens to them from now on is none of my concern. As long as they never show up in front of me again, that's fine. My parents remarried, and as the president's daughter and heir, I now need to start learning anew. As an employee, I had a fair understanding of real estate, but that's different from running a business. From now on, I need to study much more, including about company management. I don't want to end up like my parents, divorced. I stubbornly thought that I should spend a lifetime with one person, and look where that got me. It's because of the weakness of my heart. If I had been more solid in my own being, if I had truly faced Aaron, perhaps we wouldn't be in this situation today. We might still be a happily married couple. Thinking this sometimes makes my heart ache. Because I truly loved him. I seriously loved and married that person. And yet, I turned such a person into a criminal. There are times when I feel as though I am the one who bears a heavy guilt. When I shared this, both my mother and grandmother told me that was not the case. You shouldn't blame yourself. You didn't hurt anyone. That's very important. They committed crimes because they chose to do so. You're right, just like she said. If there is any guilt, it's on me for not recognizing your mother. I made you timid. Now reconciled, my mother and grandmother comforted me in this way. Blaming myself means blaming my grandmother and mother as well. I could understand that. Humans are creatures who make mistakes. But what's important is what you do after making a mistake, and that's what I've learned. I don't know if I'll ever meet someone who I can love like Aaron again. But when that time comes, I'll make sure I don't make the same mistake twice, and I'll retrain myself. It would be too sad to live a life where one mistake means never loving anyone again. But even if I never meet such a person, I'll walk tall and straight, alone. That's the kind of life I want to lead. Right now, I'm just taking the first step towards that. I am going to lead a happy life. I've sworn that to myself anew.